My dad is obsessed with this wall in our apartment and it is scaring me. For a couple of weeks now, my dad would not stop staring at this one particular wall. There was nothing special about this wall. It was painted in this weird shade of white, the same as the fur of a white rabbit, and it served to partition the dining room to the hallway leading to all of our bedrooms. It had been there since we bought this apartment for our little family to live in, my mom, my dad, and I. There was nothing special about this wall, except for this one peculiar thing. You see, you couldn't do anything with it. Baby photos fell off on their own, paintings plummeted to the ground, and when you tried to cover up the ugly white color with something more beautiful, say a rosy pink or brilliant blue, it would peel right off. The wall demanded to be left alone, and for some reason we respected its wishes. We moved our things as far away from the wall as possible, and it towered high over us as we ate and did our work on the table, watching us steadily like an owl looking for prey. There's nothing special about this wall, I repeated uneasily to myself. My dad had not moved. His work bag was flung onto the sofa, his buttons were undone and his tie was askew. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. His dinner was cold on the table. It was pad thai, in my dad's favorite. As far as I could remember, he had a particular fondness for the flavors of the East. But he did not join us for dinner, did not flop in front of the TV like he always did, flipping through the channels looking for the latest football matches. Nope, straight after work he pulled up a chair and went back to staring at the wall. It's bedtime, I whispered after I finished my homework, even though it made no difference. I looked at the clock, it was 11:30. The second hand soldiered on, its footsteps echoing around the room. Tick tick tick. Dad. Tick tick tick. A splash of drool dribbled down his chin and pooled on the floor. My dad's hands bounced on his lap as he squinted at something on that wall only he could see. Dad? He muttered something incomprehensible. Tick tick tick. Good night. Then I fled, and dived under my duvet, and listened to my racing heart, and when I finally fell asleep I heard nothing but my dad's heavy breathing on the other side of the wall. He was still sitting there the next morning, and it was clear he hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale, like he had seen a ghost, and small bits of stubble were starting to grow under his chin. I waved in front of his face. He didn't budge. Morning, Dad. Want anything? His breakfast sat cold on a stool next to him. A roasted chicken sandwich with a pickled onion relish. It is Saturday, the house was quieter than a library. I looked at the clock. It was 7:15. I got to go to badminton practice, I said, trying to keep the quaver out of my voice. Call me if you need anything, okay? Although I'm pretty sure he won't. He'll just keep staring at that damn wall for all eternity. I turned to leave, but he suddenly grabbed me by my arm. My dad leaned in close until his nose grazed my cheek. His breath blasted my face and I gagged. Look! His eyes were rolling round and round in his head, showing mostly the whites. His veins throbbed and glowed fiercely red. Don't you see? What? I asked, trying to keep my voice under control. Everything, he yelled, jabbing his thumb at the wall. It was bending quick, folding under its own weight. I swallowed. Crack. The finger rolled to my feet, its tip spun round and round like a top. Blood sputtered on my shirt. I tried not to scream. Look! He shoved me towards the wall until I could see every white grain. Sparks were flying in front of my eyes, an explosion of colors that made no sense. Then I heard it, a choir of voices, deep from within. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they made me feel weightless, floating along in a river full of bliss and joy. I watched my worries, my fears being washed away by the current, and wished I could stay there for a very long time. With us. Larry. Strong hands pulled me away from the wall and behind her back. The world was spinning, too fast, too much. I was gasping like a fish out of water, trying to regain my bearings. You've gone too far, Larry, my mum was screaming. Or at least that was what it sounded like. In reality it all blended together in a cacophony of chaos, buzzing around my mind like static from a radio. I covered my ears and made myself as small as I could. Through my mum's legs I saw my dad punching the wall until his fists bled. For a brief moment there was silence. The clock ticked. The wall stared us down, beckoning us to come forward. Larry? My mum's voice was quivering. I had never seen her this scared my whole life. Please, Larry. It's just a wall. Tick. Tick tick. It's not just a wall. My dad didn't look at us. It's a gift. It's a great gift. It sounded like he was drunk and I couldn't help but think back on when was the last time he drank any alcohol. Vaguely I remember being surrounded by wine bottles on Chinese New Year, and my dad mentioning a work party or something the Friday before he decided to sit in front of the wall for no reason. Is this some sort of dream perhaps? hallucinating that there was something in that wall granting him wishes, granting him gifts. But no, this felt as real as it could be, and the more I stared at the wall, the more I was convinced I knew what my dad was talking about. It seemed to be pulling me in. Like a moth to a flame. Am I going mad too? I'll show you the gift, my dad shouted suddenly. He leaped in front of my mum like a jaguar, his right arm gripping her shoulder and his left arm gripping her arm. My mum struggled, but it wasn't any use. She was trapped. Dance with me. And so they danced, under the glistening sunlit ceiling that Saturday afternoon. My parents twirled around the room, so fast I felt dizzy watching them. Music burst out of nowhere, carried forth by an invisible orchestra, and filled the room like water from a tap. The music crescendoed. My dad was grinning like a shark, and his eyeballs were rolling round and round his head, until a sputter of blood dripped down his cheeks. My mum looked like she wanted to scream at first, but eventually, she relaxed. Her eyelids drooped, and for as long as I could remember, she smiled. Faster and faster they went, spinning like a top, and as they danced they grew thinner and paler, until you could see through them and they were nothing more than wisps of smoke. And then they were gone. I didn't know what to think. All that ran through my mind was that this wasn't real. It has to be some dream, right? Right? But sitting there, paralyzed, my blood running cold until it was almost ice, I knew it wasn't. I tried standing up, but my legs buckled and I crumbled. All I could do was to stare at the ceiling, listening as the music died away. I bit my lip until it bled, but I didn't feel any pain. Just nothing. I stared at the wall, hating it. Hating it for what it had done for me, for them. Hating how it tore our family apart, like the cracks on that smug white paint. And that propelled me forward. It gave me energy again. I had no weapons, nothing to really destroy the wall with, but I didn't care. I used my fists instead, pummeling the wall until my skin flaked off and started to bleed. I yelled, I screamed, and finally I sobbed. Don't you want to be with the rest of us? There was that weightless feeling again, and I felt the worries of the world disappear. All that mattered now was the wall, and the wall alone. My arms dropped to the sides and went slack. Then for the first time since I could remember, the wall came alive. It was like I unlocked a secret video game level by punching the wall, because suddenly ink crawled upon the wall. I watched as it blossomed, growing like a sapling into a tree, as invisible hands weaved tales on its canvas. There was no color, and the art looked centuries old. I saw countless faces, men, women, and children, in various styles of dress, smiling and holding hands. My parents were in the middle, looking happier than I had ever seen them. My dad had his palms pressed together, as if in prayer. My mum stretched out her arm and beckoned me over. We can be one happy family again. I couldn't look away. With all of my willpower I moved backwards and jiggled the doorknob. It was locked. Afternoon has turned into evening, and evening into night. The final jet of sunlight disappeared into the shadows and long faded away. All that remained is that wall, lit up like a demented Christmas tree. Soft, warm, golden light, but yet it hurts. How much longer could I resist? How much longer can I write on my phone with shaking hands, as my fate draws steadily nearer? How long does it take for the police to arrive? The choir still calls, their songs wriggling deeper into my mind. I shift uneasily, and realize that I'm once again a centimeter closer to that wall. I rub my eyes and yawn. When I close my eyes I can still see them. Smiling. Once again I wonder, how much longer?